The Uyghurs fight for self-determination, and Beijing tightens its grip on an oil and mineral-rich region. Next on Global Pulse. How media covered the ethnic unrest in China's Xinjiang province. In a week where world media seemed obsessed by the death of Michael Jackson, in northwest China, violent clashes broke out between Uyghur Muslims and Han Chinese, killing 156. I'm Erin Coker, and you might have heard the Uyghur name before when some of them were released from Guantanamo. For Fox News, back then, it was like terrorists gone wild.
It's a far cry from prison. 4 Chinese Uighurs arriving in Bermuda in the dark of night, sending shockwaves across a 21-mile island.
CIA officials still believe 3 of the 4 were captured leaving Tora Bora, and they believe they played a role in allowing bin Laden to escape. They just couldn't prove the court case.
And now they want to open a restaurant.
They want to open up a restaurant in Bermuda. This is outrageous.
But a month later, outrage turned to sympathy as Chinese riot police moved to break up a Uyghur protest that turned violent.
Uyghur exiles say the demonstrations were part of a youth movement which used the internet and blogs to organize a peaceful protest after Uyghur migrant workers were beaten and killed by the Chinese. The protest became bloody, they say, only after the communist regime cracked down. China is blaming foreigners. In this case, a Uyghur exile in the U.S., Rabia Kadir, is accused of, quote, masterminding the violence, a claim she denies.
China's state-controlled media was not indecisive. They knew who to blame for the violence.
A separatist group masterminded Sunday's violence, aiming to sabotage the country.
The Xinjiang regional government says instigators began spreading information on the internet on Saturday evening, calling for a demonstration in Urumqi. Rioters took to the street of Urumqi on Sunday evening. They began the gathering, marching and demonstrating, which then culminated in violent acts. An initial investigation shows the violence was masterminded by the separatist group World Uyghur Congress.
Uyghur activists tell a different story, of police using cattle prods and firing guns. Germany's Deutsche Welle dug deeper to find the root of the protests.
The protests are thought to have been triggered by a clash between Uyghur and Han ethnic groups last month in southern China. 2 Uyghur workers were beaten to death as revenge for an alleged rape. The latest violence erupted over accusations of a cover-up of those deaths. Uyghurs say the tension is also due to decades of repression by the Chinese authorities.
The Uyghurs have lived in the Xinjiang province for over 1,200 years. The proportion of Han Chinese rose from 6% in 1949, when Beijing reestablished control of the province, to 40% by 2000. In the process, the Uyghurs say they lost much of their political and economic power. Al Jazeera seemed to take up the Uyghur cause. Their reporter was on the front line of the tense standoffs that followed 2 days of violent clashes and mass arrests.
You have police on this side, and on the far side of the road, more police, and you have the Uyghurs caught in between in this neighborhood.
They don't know what's happened to all the men. The police just came, they tell us, and took them away during the night. And suddenly the sadness took a more aggressive and violent tone. This government-organized trip for foreign journalists suddenly gone terribly off message. Armed police with guns and electric cattle prods, soldiers with shields and sticks.
In a remarkable confrontation during the protest, a lone woman showed how powerful a determined individual can be. This Guardian UK video shows her emerging from the crowd on a crutch, slowly limping to within inches in front of a paramilitary vehicle. It backs up, more steps forward and another retreat. She continued until an officer promised to help her find her husband and 4 brothers. Later that day, when Han Chinese retaliated against the Uyghurs, CCTV was silent, but Al Jazeera was there.
It looks like the Han Chinese are on the rampage now. Everywhere we've gone, we've seen them carrying sticks, they say, to protect themselves, but we have seen them using the sticks. We've seen them heading towards the direction of Uyghur neighborhoods, singing the Chinese national anthem and saying that they are going to protect their countries.
The U.S. and other nations have condemned China for the crackdown. But writing for Salon.com, columnist Glenn Greenwald posed an interesting question. Would there be more pressure on China if the Uyghurs were actually Christian instead of Muslim? Tell us what you think. For Global Pulse, I'm Erin Coker.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only US network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.